You know, I tell you what she said, but we're still having it translated. She arrived at the arena just as you'd expect. In fact, here's a shot of her limo.
Nice.
Her husband, Doug Emhoff, was in such a celebratory mood, he knocked up 2 nannies. 2! Tim Waltz's former high school football players introduced him on Wednesday, but people on social media pointed out that Waltz only served as an assistant coach, mostly assisting them with their tampons.
The Democrat Party is in ruin. They just had this 4-day fest of the self-licking ice cream cone. And Kamala Harris was anointed as the Democrat nominee. The Game of Thrones, the Iron Throne is hers. Cersei, shame, shame, the hoedown, whatever you want to call it. But now, Robert F. Kennedy, a name that is synonymous with the Democrat Party, the Kennedy name, has come out today in Arizona, and he has thrown his support behind Donald Trump, suspended his campaign, and it's because he's scared of the Democrat Party. You've got to listen to this. Faces are melting right on CNN.
On states, I would likely hand the election over to the Democrats with whom I disagree on the most existential issues: censorship, war, and chronic disease. Oh, I want everyone to know that I am not terminating my campaign. I am simply suspending it and not ending it. My name, my name will remain on the ballot in most states. If you live in a blue state, you can vote for me without harming or helping President Trump or Vice President Harris. In red states, the same will apply. I encourage you to vote for me. And if enough of you do vote for me, and neither of the major party candidates win 270 votes, which is quite possible. In fact, today our polling shows them tying at 269 to 269. And I could conceivably still end up in the White House.
What in the hell is that? If you're going to suspend your campaign, get off of the ballot, get out of the way. Do not Ross Perot this election. Without Ross Perot, we never have the Clinton Foundation. We never have the Clinton machine. We never have Monica Lewinsky under the desk in the Oval Office. We never have that. And Monica Lewinsky, much like Kamala Harris, changed the direction of the country and her own career and Hillary Clinton's career on her knees. And you can say what you want. That's up to you. But Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I thought this was going to be a little more solid. I thought this was going to be more realistic than saying I'm still going to be in the ballots. Let's see what else he's got to say here. Leave your comment down below. What do you think this does to the election?
A contingent election. But
like 3 people
in about 10 battleground states where my presence would be a spoiler, I'm going to remove my name.
Okay.
And I've already started that process.
So he's going to take his name off the ballot in battleground states, starting like Arizona. I'm assuming Pennsylvania, Georgia, probably Michigan. Battleground states. I can see him taking his name off the ballot there. And it sounds like he's just wanting to stay on the ballot in these other states to gain some relevancy, notoriety, maybe giving all the protesters somebody to vote for. I'm not sure about this. This doesn't make sense to me.
Urge voters not to vote for me. It's with a sense of victory and not defeat that I'm suspending my campaign activities. Not only did we do the impossible by collecting 1 million signatures, we changed the national political conversation forever. Chronic disease, free speech, government corruption, breaking our addiction to war have moved to the center of politics. I can say to all who have worked so hard in the last year and a half, thank you for a job well done. 3 great causes drove me to enter this race in the first place, primarily. And these are the principal causes that persuaded me to leave the Democratic Party. And and run as an independent. And now to throw my support to President Trump. The causes were free speech, the war in Ukraine, and the war on our children.
Wow. Free speech, war in Ukraine, war on the kids. Three things that the Democrat Party really has a problem with. Number one, free speech is not free under the Democrat Party, under the Kamala Harris regime. Number two, the war in Ukraine is an endless pit to throw money. Okay? You can see that. And the war on kids, you can see that the way that the Democrat Party continuously promotes, actually pays some of these influencers to go and read books to little people. You can see that. Robert F. Kennedy nails it. And all three of those reasons are very important to many voters across the country. Me personally, I want a secure border. I want control of our own economy. And that means limiting the amount of money that we're sending to other countries, sending the amount of cash that we're sending to other people. And the thing with kids, oh, wow, that is, I never thought Robert F. Kennedy would go on CNN, or at least I didn't think CNN would have broadcast that. I thought they would cut away from this.
I've already described some of my personal experiences and struggles with the government's censorship industrial complex. I want to say a word about the Ukraine war. The military-industrial complex has provided us with a familiar comic book justification like they do on every war.
Monitoring this from RFK Jr.,
This
but
one is a noble effort to
that
stop a
was
supervillain,
so
Vladimir Putin,
much.
Invading the Ukraine and then to thwart his Hitler-like march across Europe. In fact, tiny Ukraine is a proxy in a geopolitical struggle.
Doug High with us, as well as Johanna Maska. She's the host of the Press Advance podcast.
Okay, here we go. Soon as RFK starts talking about Ukraine, CNN says, hey, cut him off, cut him off, cut him off, cut him off. Let's get out of here. Let's get out of here. Let's see what CNN says. This is going to be good. This is where they slam dunk RFK because he touched the third rail. He touched the Ukraine rail. This is good.
Podcast. She's a former Obama White House director of Press Advance. He's talking about wanting, and we've seen a press filing or a court filing in Pennsylvania. Yeah. So he's saying that he's taking himself off of these ballot access challenges in states where he would be a spoiler, right? Mm-hmm. These battleground states, like, tell me if I've got this right, Doug. But when it comes to a red state or a blue state, you can sort of, if you want to vote for him, you can then register how you feel about him. And then in the crazy possible chance of a 269 tie between Trump and Harris, then maybe he can just ride that all the way to the White House?
Yeah, I was watching that, and Donald Trump last week stood and said in front of a bunch of groceries and said, I haven't seen any Cheerios in a long time. I had Cheerios for breakfast. This was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And trying to get any logic out of that is good luck with that. Because it's, one, you can't understand what he says. Two, if you can, you can't understand what he says.
Did they just make fun of Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s voice? Listen to this.
Cheerios for breakfast. This was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And trying to get any logic out of that is good luck with that. Because it's, one, you can't understand what he says. Two, if you can, you can't understand what he says. And reminded of a line in Mel Brooks' Blazing Saddles when somebody gets up and gives an indecipherable speech. He says, who can argue with that? That's authentic frontier gibberish. And that's exactly what that is.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I was going to say, to your point, though, Brianna, the big overarching issue here for both campaigns, for the Harris campaign and the Trump campaign, is the third party sort of X factor and what that means for turnout in November. So even if what he was saying wasn't easy to follow, it is still the concern of either campaign, which is partially why Trump is looking for that endorsement, that these voters are sort of the X factor in what they decide to do with RFK Jr. going into November when it's going to be such a tight race. And we've seen that before back in 2016.
And yet his supporters may be confused because we're even confused based on his own statements. Now we've gotten a fresh statement from his campaign clarifying previous remarks in which initially in this court fighting in Pennsylvania, it said that he would be endorsing Donald Trump. His campaign came out and said that's not what's happening. then he, in his remarks, said that he was throwing his support behind Trump over the war in Ukraine, what he described as the war on our children, and chronic disease was another one. It's hard to make sense of. Johanna Maska, what do you see in all of this as this rambling speech goes on and he launches attacks against Democrats?
Well, and look, he's reminding us who he is. I mean, he's the troubled son of a famous politician who has had drug problems
Wow.
with women, nefarious business dealings with Venezuela. I mean, there were a lot of questions about his intentions in this campaign from the get-go. He is not ready for prime time and certainly not ready for the presidency. I mean, he's never held elected office, but he got some momentum because a lot of Americans didn't want Trump and they didn't want Biden. And I think we have to be careful as Democrats not to demonize the views of his supporters. There are a lot of people who are skeptical of modern medicine right now. We don't need to demonize them. We need to seek to understand. We need to go after those followers. I don't know if there's people in, Pennsylvania who are following exactly what he's saying, but I think, he's reminded us who he is. So now it's time for the Democrats to really go after his supporters who have questions about Trump too.
Okay, Joanna, seek to understand people who believe that kids should not get childhood vaccines that keep them safe. I mean, I understand there's a lot of debate, and you can say whatever you will of the COVID vaccine, but what he's talked about and the folks who've gravitated towards him, they have a particular set of views on something broader than that.
Well, and you're right. The truth is I'm from the Respect, Empower, Include original Obama team. And people are going to have some different views, ones that are very hard to follow for other people who have more information. But that is not.
Okay, this is where they start slam dunking on RFK. I think it's amazing to watch the left melt down. It's very similar to the attacks on Twitter, the attacks on X. If the mainstream media, more importantly, the left-wing media, does not or is not allowed to control the narrative, then they start slam dunking on whoever's in the way. That's what's going on here. This is where CNN actually made fun of Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s voice, and he has the problems with his voice because of some schmaxines, okay? That's what caused the loss of his capabilities with his voice. And for CNN to slam dunk on that, it's much like someone would go out and make fun of Tim Walz's son having some anxiety, some mental health problems. CNN, you're disgusting. You're vile. You are possibly the worst case of news I have ever seen on TV. It's absolutely disgusting. I am not sure how bad or how low CNN can go. They kind of proved it here with their methodology of going after Robert F. Kennedy Jr. because of his voice. You might not like what he has to say, but he brings up a lot of good points. A lot of good points. I'm the Vet Biker. I'm going to get out of here. You take care. See you on the road.